Well, welcome everybody to another installment of podcast Change Your World. My name's Tom Hurd. I'm here with two of my sons, Kyle and Casey, and this is a program where we talk about current events, we talk about politics, we talk about religion. You know, all those things you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. But we've got some definite opinions, but we'd love to hear yours as well. We'll try to look at topics from both sides, kind of see if there's any common ground there. And today we are going to talk about AOC's resolution that was just presented to Congress, recognizing the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal. Kyle, are you at a position where you can talk there now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Kyle, you're the one that wanted to talk about this, so tell me why you thought this was an important topic to discuss today.
Well, it's a resolution, so they're putting it forth to Congress for them to vote on it. These are the things that we need to focus on within the next 10 years, according to them.
Right.
They talk about a study in October 2018, the special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And there's another study as well, but basically saying that global warming is happening. We need to do something about it within the next 10 or 15 years. And there's been talk back and forth about is global warming real? Is it, or is it, I guess, climate change now? It's not really global warming.
Right.
Because in the 70s, they thought everybody was going to freeze to death, and then
they proposed actually nuking the polar ice caps at one point.
And then in the 90s, it was
global warming,
and now it's.
But the reason that they actually changed was it was global warming in the 90s and early 2000s, and they had these global warming symposiums in New York and different places, and they kept having to cancel them because of blizzards. So it became very embarrassing for them. They couldn't have their global warming symposium because it was too cold.
Yes.
So now they've come up in their creative way with climate change is the new threat.
And I think we can all agree that human beings have contributed a little bit to the greenhouse gases that are in our environment. I think everybody in the world can agree on that. And
yeah,
I think.
Go ahead.
Wait a minute. I think we can agree that it contributes to it. I don't think I can agree with their statement here that it is the dominant cause of climate change.
Well, that is the part that we're going to discuss, because they get all of the scientists, and you get Bill Nye or whatever, and 97% of scientists believe in human caused climate change. But
do you know at one time 100% of scientists believe the Earth is flat?
Well, they don't ever give how much are humans, to blame.
Yeah, it's just
it's a blanket statement, and then they all agree with it, because how can you not agree with it? Obviously, from caveman days or whatever, we're putting out more carbon emissions. So anyone would agree with that.
I agree. You're right. But science is not done by consensus. Just because 97% of scientists agree with something doesn't make that thing true. Science is about facts.
Yeah, and I think that it is definitely a fact that there are more greenhouse gases in the environment now than 300 years ago.
I think that's a point that can be made, but it's also a point to be made that humans aren't the leading cause. As we were talking about before we started the recording for the podcast, but
talk about your.
We were talking about Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. It erupted in 1991, and I think part of the new Green Deal is that they're worried that global temperatures will increase. There'll be a fluctuation of like 2 degrees Celsius in global average temperature, and that'll be bad. Well, when this volcano erupted, it caused global temperatures to drop by an average of 0.5 degrees Celsius for the years of 1991 to 1993. So this one volcanic eruption did more to affect the entire world than industrialized humanity have done in hundreds of years. And it was just a single volcano. So I think that the statement that like humans are the leading cause of climate change is not really accurate. When you have stuff like that, where it was, you get Mother Nature involved, and it can do things a lot more effectively than I think humans can, even with our developments and any potential runoff or pollution or anything that they're all worried about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to Kyle's point, I mean, I think you can agree there. After the Industrial Revolution, there was probably a lot of pollution that began at that time, and it went unchecked for many years until until people really began to take notice of the effects that it was having on the environment. And then since that time, there's been huge efforts to curb emissions and all sorts of different pollution sources.
We're
But it's been
basically
more,
saying that we can agree that it is maybe some sort of a cause. We don't have the research, but none of us are obviously scientists. I mean,
No.
people bash on Bill Nye all the time. Well, he's just an engineer. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. None of us are climate scientists
or engineers.
Or engineers. But I think it's interesting to, along that same point, is that we're not scientists or engineers, but you can just look at the facts here. Like, even if you just take my thing about Mount Pinatubo, it's like, well, there obviously humans aren't the leading cause of climate change because this volcano changed global climate for 3 years. So it's definitely not like, even in reading that, I say, well, that's not a true factoid that humans are the leading cause, but it's all in the politics, really, because they don't want to say, well, humans
even if they say that humans are 51%, which would even if we grant that, which would make it a majority, right?
I'm not granting that.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, hypothetical. Even if we grant that, is the United States government, the EPA, the ones that are going to fix that? Is giving them trillions and trillions of dollars the answer to the climate change problem?
No.
Hell no.
No. I mean, they couldn't even stop the thing with ghosts in the late 80s in New York, so I don't trust them. Sorry, reference there.
No. And the point, too, which we've discussed before, is that no matter what rules or regulations the United States, even though they talk about, we're a disproportionate amount of the pollution.
Well, they say historically. I mean, to be fair.
Historically, and that's probably true at some point. Yeah. But we were the only one of the only nations in the climate that were originally in the climate accord that we had a decrease in our emissions, even after we left the climate accord, and of course,
and relaxing regulation on industry and business.
Right. Right. Because you've got huge growing economies in India and in China that are, you remember a few years ago they had the Olympics in Beijing. People had to wear masks.
Yeah. Well, they always wear masks. I mean, any kind of picture you see of a Chinese airport or whatever.
Yeah, it's so bad.
Yeah. And think about, the Bay Area back in the 90s, all the smog that they had in LA and all that. And that's pretty much gone now.
It's cleaned up a lot.
With no, I mean, well, I don't know about the state government of California as far as them.
Well, they have different gasolines. It's a different gasoline blend that costs $8 a gallon. Being facetious there, but it's the California gasoline costs much more than any other gasoline around the country because it's specially refined.
Yeah. Well, I know all of the diesel trucks now, the new one, they have that diesel exhaust fluid, and that's to coincide with the California emission control
right.
thing. So,
Yeah.
maybe the government helped there a little bit. I'm not sure, but the
Yeah.
when there is call for something, if you are in a free market society, there's going to be somebody that comes up with the idea.
Right.
Because they're, I doubt that the government was the ones that came up with the diesel exhaust fluid stuff.
I'll guarantee you they weren't.
I doubt that the government was the big driving force in fracking to make the um, that cleaner. As far as
right.
than coal mining or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's by relaxing regulation and leaving it up to the public sector, it creates a lot more opportunities.
Right.
Well,
let me just give you a little bit of perspective here too. Of one of the reasons why I'm always looking at climate change, Green New Deal stuff, I always look at it a little bit askance, is because historically, when the environmental, quote unquote, environment started in the late 60s, early 70s, basically what it was started by was communists. And I don't mean that this isn't a joke. This is absolutely the fact. There was a lot of pressure. If you recall the McCarthy era, when he was talking about, there was all these communists in Hollywood and so on and so forth. He claimed a lot of people were communists. Well, the communists were actually working inside the United States to overthrow our government. It's in the Communist Manifesto. They're going to work from the inside out to overthrow our government because they couldn't get control of us from the outside. And when communism basically became viewed for what it is and how dangerous it is, how evil it is, really, and it lost favor, many of the communists then changed and went into the environment. And the whole idea there, they couched it, or they covered it in all this: we care about the environment, we want to leave Earth to our children, and so on and so forth. But the underlying motion was to create all these regulations that would basically cripple business and the free market economy in the United States and allow an easier foothold for socialism and communism. Now, you can call me a kook, but that's the absolute truth of when this got started. The vast majority of environmentalists in the beginning were communists. The stated goal was to take down the United States.
All right,
so
kook.
I am a kook, there's no doubt. But with that history, whenever I look at any of this climate change stuff, I'm automatically starting out a little bit on the defensive because of those points.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. And if you look at this bill, the purpose of the bill, the Green New Deal, was to save the environment. But they have all of this tacked on. Basically, they talk about the socialists in Congress and everything. I mean, this isn't even socialism. This is straight up comrade communism.
Give me some examples of what you're talking about there, if you can.
What, from the bill?
Yeah.
They talk about that. That they give some guidelines for what they want to do as far as the environment. They want to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Create millions. But then the next point is to create millions of good high wage jobs and ensure prosperity and economic security for all people of the United States. And then they add some more. We want clean air and clean water, healthy food, blah blah blah. But then we also need to. Where's it at?
Well, I mean, you ever hear the phrase "a chicken in every pot"?
Yeah.
Yep.
that phrase comes from I think it's either Marx or Lenin, but it was basically extolling the benefits of communism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no, you know, everybody's going to be even. You know, we're all going to do great, chicken in every pot. You know, and of course, what really happens when government becomes communist ultimately is that it, you know, everybody is the same, but they're the same in misery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with bread lines and so on and so forth. So,
What's interesting about this, the new Green Deal or Green New Deal, is they talk about how like they want to completely do away with fossil fuels and go strictly to green energy. But one of the best and proven forms of green energy that we have, they don't want. In fact, they want us to actually do away with the green energy we are using in favor of wind and water power. I'm talking, of course, about our
Solar,
nuclear.
solar.
Yeah, and solar. And I'm talking, of course, about our nuclear reactor, which is
the cleanest,
the cleanest
source of energy.
Yeah, that we, you know, like they don't want anything to do with it. They in fact want us to get rid of our nuclear power plants that we do have in the country.
right now, so there's a perfect example. Why is it now? You know, they'll throw a 3 Mile Island up. They'll throw Chernobyl. They'll throw the Tokyo thing up. And okay, those are all. Let's talk about.
It needs
those.
to be handled safely.
Well, personally, I think the Tokyo one is a misnomer because, like, oh yeah, we had a near meltdown. Yeah, after it got hit by an earthquake and a tsunami,
and it was
like I think
super old.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to the development and the safety of these things, that it can survive all of that.
Sure.
I mean,
but
France,
again,
like I think 75% of their energy comes from nuclear power plant, nuclear.
Right. And it has been for decades.
They haven't had any kind of problems or meltdowns or anything. I mean, but they, you have to take care of the stuff. You can't just not worry about it.
Right, but the thing of it is the cleanest, and not only that, it's power. We don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you might say, okay, well, we'll go to solar, and this will be good, but you know, the battery, so long. So 6 hours out of the day, you can't use any power. But you know, hey, the other 18 hours, you're good to go. There's always a trade off. There's always a loss somehow with nuclear energy. It's far superior. I mean, it lasts forever. One little, you know, atomic isotope can power a nuclear plant for generations. You know, so you got to ask yourself if it's so clean and it's so efficient and it does such a good job, then why aren't we just putting our technology into bettering the safety of it, and go all in on this? And so you got to ask yourself, is what's the motivation of the people that are against it? And again, I'm going to go back to there's a certain element of the movement. Not everybody is, you know, I'm not trying to talk about a conspiracy theory, but there's a certain element in the environmental movement that believes that the United States needs to be knocked down off of its high horse and knocked down a notch or two in the world economy, because we've polluted more than everybody else, we've done better than everybody else, and we need to have our comeuppance, which was exactly Obama's attitude the whole time he was president.
Well, and if we pass this resolution, then that's exactly what will happen.
Exactly.
I mean, they talk about they need to put in. We need electric cars. We do away with airplanes and all of the emissions creating vehicles. And we're going to move to strictly solar and wind and I guess hydroelectric water. Which makes up roughly 13% of our, I think, it may even be less than 10%. I forget the exact number.
Yeah, I think it is less than 10%, but
I mean, just to be generous, I'll say 13% of
Mhm.
our power is made up by these, renewable resources. And actually, part of the renewable resources is burning trees, which it counts as a renewable resource because you can plant new trees, but it's not exactly good for the environment.
Right.
So we're going to do away with that. So now 100% of our power needs to be covered by wind and power and solar and water, and they
Yeah.
want to have all these electric cars, which
hmm
the majority of electricity from in the United States is from nuclear and coal.
And coal, right.
So we're just crippling ourselves and our
Yeah.
economy. Not to mention, I
Well,
mean, the economy. All the people that work in those fields, and then if they get their way with the healthcare, all of that economy, and the work in those fields.
right. Well, but they never look. See, that's the problem with general and liberal thought is that they don't look at the what do they call it the circumstances the what happens after you do it oh gosh, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Anyway, it'll come to me. But when you do A, B will ultimately happen. And they don't look at B. It's just like, oh, well, wind power is this great power because we've got all this wind blowing across the plains. We put up these big propeller-driven turbines, and we're getting all this free power, and it's clean and it's renewable. And the bird population is absolutely decimated in those areas.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be long if they continued that the animal rights people would shut those wind turbines down anyway. So,
Yeah.
uh, the unforeseen consequences of what you do,
Yeah.
never seems to be looked at.
Well, just the consequences in general, I think. Like
Mhm.
that's where, they get they had before this report even came out, they asked, there was a poll, and that's where Ocasio-Cortez got her numbers. There's like 84% of Democrats and 64% of Republicans agree with this deal. Because if it was before it came out, so they don't know exactly what was in it. But if you tell people, well, would you be in favor of a bill or resolution that helps the environment? Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
It should
then,
have been
if you don't
100%.
explain the bad parts about socialism and capitalism, like would you like everyone to be able to live a comfortable life?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Of course I would love that.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you the consequences of that.
Right.
Mhm.
But back to
Right.
my point about they slapped on communism here.
Yeah.
So after you get through, we need to decimate the economy and all of that. We need to ensuring that the Green New Deal creates high quality union jobs that pay prevailing wages, hires local workers, offers training and advancement opportunities, guaranteeing a job with family sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, retirement, security to all people in the United States, strengthening and protecting the right of all workers to organize, unionize, collectively bargain, free of coercion, intimidation, and harassment, strengthening and enforcing labor workplace health and safety, anti-discrimination, wage and hour standards across all employers, industries, and sectors.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, where'd it go? Here we go. Obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous peoples for all decisions that affect indigenous peoples and their traditional territories, honoring all treaties. Blah, blah, blah.
Man.
Yep.
But they want. I can't find it in here exactly, but they do want basically what's it called? What is it called?
What?
Where everybody gets a universal basic income,
Oh, yeah.
and you're guaranteed that whether
Yeah.
you can't or don't want to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't want to work if I'm going to get guaranteed income.
Well,
Yeah.
would want to?
Exactly. Exactly. See, that's another one of those consequences that they're not looking at. Who's going to go to work and bust their tail for 40, 50, 60 hours a week if they can make the same amount of money sitting on their at home?
Yeah. Well, not only
Or
that, but I mean, if
are
you're
you going
putting
to be
in this high speed rail and we want to do away with airplanes, we're going to need, unless we want to just cut Hawaii off from the rest of the world, we're going to need a high speed rail that goes to Hawaii, right?
Well, and then what if you want to go to England? What if you want to go anywhere? You're
Yeah.
going to need high
What I'm
speed rail.
saying is, if who's going to build this, that would be a super dangerous job, putting giant pillars up all the
Who's
way to
going
the
to
ocean
pay
floor.
for it? That's the
Yeah.
question. Who's going to pay?
Well, and then who's going to work it? You got a super
Yeah.
dangerous job, or you could not work if you don't want to. Like,
And
Exactly.
still get paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are going to say, "Well, I'm not going to be a freeloader. I'm going to go ahead and then you give that 6 months where you're out there working and you're watching everybody else having a good time, kicking back, getting their guaranteed income. You're not going to be out there. You're not going to do it for very long. You
No.
know, it's just human nature is what is what it is, and
Mhm.
they don't allow for that. You know, they never do. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you have to look at the consequences for everything. You know, that's what we're trying to show people, because it's easy to fall into that trap. Like, you know, well, shouldn't everybody have, you know, money to a living wage, whatever? You know, that's what they're used. Well, I mean, first of all, what the hell is a living wage?
Yeah.
And, you know, but when you hear that, you say, yeah, but they don't tell you that that involves stealing from other people, you know,
Right. Right.
and then,
Well, it
you know, the reason why all of these countries that are communists and socialists don't let you leave is
Yeah.
because if you're a rich guy, you know, like they keep talking about all these billionaires or whatever, how they're immoral or whatever. If they say tomorrow, all right, everyone that makes above $100 million a year or whatever, you're going to pay 90% tax, you know, between federal and state. How many do you think would still live here?
None.
I mean,
Yep.
why
Zero.
would you?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Canada's a socialist paradise, but you know, at least it's only 50% taxes there, or in Denmark, or you know, whatever. You know,
Hey, mark my words. If this happens, what's going to happen is the wealthy people, and they already have done some of this. They've purchased property in places. Australia is a good example.
yeah,
There's these huge tracts of land that are owned by very, very, very wealthy people from the United States, and that's done specifically because if something like this socialistic society that the Democrats are all talking about states, they're out of here. They're gone.
and even if you know that you take all of the money from all the corporations and all of the richest 1% or whatever in the United States, it still doesn't come close to being able to pay for this.
No.
So, you know, they keep talking about how, you know, the rich need to pay their fair share. The middle class is going to be the ones that are hit the hardest.
yeah.
The
Sure.
ones that can't afford to move to Australia and,
Right.
you know, can't afford to hire the best the people to do your taxes, to, you know, find all the loopholes and everything so they don't have to pay as much taxes.
Exactly. Exactly right.
You know, I mean, it happened in, I think it was the 60s or 70s in England. Their top tax bracket was 90%. And that's what the Beatles song "Tax Man" was about.
Right.
Was, you know, it was 19 for me and one for you.
Right.
And those people poured out of England, all the
Yeah.
rich people.
Yeah.
You
What's
know,
happening in California right now too?
yeah,
There's a
a lot of them
and in
moved
New
to
York,
Texas.
and same with New York. There's a lot of people leaving New York because of the high tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to pay Amazon, you know, give them all kinds of benefits or whatever to bring
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
their factory, or not their factory, their distribution center into
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always find it so disingenuous and just incorrect when they say like the rich need to pay their fair share. Because like mathematically speaking, if you have a 10% tax, it's the same across the board.
Yeah, and then they pay more, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I don't know
if
what
you have
what
if you have
exactly the answer
$10,
is.
if you have $10, there's a 10% tax. You pay $1. The person who has $1,000 pays $100. Like that's the same. Like the percentage share is the same, but they all want to get into this class warfare where like
Yeah, that's what it is.
yeah. So
I mean that's how communism started.
yeah.
The bourgeoisie and
Mm-hmm.
the workers unite. We need to get rid of all these rich people and take all their stuff. And oh wait, they're leaving, so we need to build this wall. You're not allowed to leave. Like.
I need to build a wall, huh? Yeah.
What did you guys think of the State of the Union? Just real quick.
Well, I believe Tom had to step away. He's
okay.
Something's going to attend to. So just us sons here.
Did you watch the State of the Union or see any? See the highlights?
I didn't see any of the highlights. What was the general overview?
I thought it was good. There was a couple things. He included something in there about how we need to stop investigating things and people. Like I was like, okay, that's you're pushing a little strong there, Trump. And he said something crazy about North Korea too. If he wasn't president, we would be in a protracted war with North Korea.
Well, I don't know if it would be that bad, but North Korea would still be a considerable threat. I
don't think so.
But they definitely would be in peace talks with South Korea without Trump there being.
I'm worried about that anyway.
So, anyway, what was some of the other things about the State of the Union?
Those were two things that I didn't think were great, but everything else, and I mean, there was some things where he kind of scratched the back of the Democrats. He talked about his prison reform, which I mean, parts of that I agree with, and other parts I'm not in favor of. And then he talked about he wanted to get basically a health care bill or whatever put in place where we could, cover pre-existing conditions and stuff like that. Kind of a socialism light, I guess. But it was, to kind of extend a hand to the Democrats, and they didn't clap for any of it. And they just kind of looked. The Democrats really looked bad in it because he talked about we've lowered the amounts of sex trafficking that's gone down, and they didn't clap for that. And then he talked about a little girl with cancer that like beat cancer, and they didn't want to clap for that. And the only thing they did really clap for was there's a bunch of women in Congress now, and all these Democrat women got up and clapped, and they're not clapping for historic low black unemployment and historic low Latino unemployment and historic low Asian unemployment. They're not clapping for any of that.
No.
And he says, there's more women in Congress than there ever has been, and they get up and do a standing applause for that, and it just makes him look bad.
Oh yeah. I mean, it just comes across as them being so petty. It's like, do you not care about these other things? Like, regardless of the president's political affiliation, like I didn't agree with what President Obama did a lot of the times, but I agreed his.
Well, there's certain things you got to stand up and clap for. Like whether you agree with it or not. We're limiting sex trafficking. Okay,
yeah,
I'll stand up and clap for that.
You do, and you also. I mean, this is maybe just me having a more of a old-fashioned upbringing, I guess. But I personally believe, regardless of what you personally feel about it, you respect the office of the president, and it's so like. Like I said, I didn't agree with what President Obama did. I did not really care for the man personally, but he was our president. And if I was ever in a place, where like he's there. You want to stand up and show your respect due to the office of the president.
Yeah.
But like, especially with what I've seen and what you've told me about the State of the Union, it's like they don't respect the office of the president. It's only when it's somebody they like that they will.
And that's the problem. And like the biggest thing was, after Obama, I think all the Democrats thought that it was over. Like we're gonna own the United States government for the next 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
And even with all the during the election, all the polls and stuff showed that Hillary was going to win.
Yeah.
And it just kind of hurts their sensibilities that that's not the case. And I mean, I don't want to get started on the Republicans now, but they've upset me.
Yeah.
What is Tom gone? Dad gone?
Yeah, he had to go to a meeting, so we can cut it here if you want.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll, be back later, maybe next week, and put a new one out there.
All right.
But for all of us here and the two remaining, have a great day, a great afternoon, and get out there and change
your world.